Now, Corina Kopke, project coordinator for SARIL, is going to present the the project to all of us. So, Corina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see the presentation slides?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Then thank you very much for the introduction and the organization of this webinar, and also thanks to the speakers so far for the super interesting presentations. So I'm happy to present to you the SARIL project, which stands for Sustainability and Resilience for Infrastructure and Logistics Networks. So we've heard already of some of these disruptions. So when you see these news articles that I've collected, I guess it will remind you of maybe impacts that you were facing in your own businesses or the impacts that you felt in your daily life. So very prominent ones were the COVID pandemic impacting on global supply chains, but also the blocking of the Suez Canal. We still face or we feel the impacts of the war in the Ukraine, but there are also other impacts on supply chains. For example, natural hazards like the flooding here in northern Italy, but also bushfires in Portugal, for example. And all these disruptions impact on the supply chains. And the aim of SARIL is to handle such disruptions in a sustainable way. So just to show you where we are on the journey of the SARIL project. So we started the project in June last year, and we just launched the survey that this webinar is all about the survey more or less, and you will hear more about it in a bit. And end of this year, we will have the midterm of the project, and then it runs until the mid of 26. Just upfront so that you know what the project aims to do. So it's two aspects that we want to address. One is to develop decision support systems and concepts for resilient and sustainable logistics operations during disruptions. And we are doing this to then come to recommendations regarding disruption handling and green business models for logistics operators, but also for authorities. And now I will take the rest of my presentation to explain you how we want to get there. So this is what the SARIL consortium looks like. It consists of 15 partners that are depicted here in the map, and they cover more or less all over Europe. So we have 4 research organizations, that is Fraunhofer EMI coordinating the project, and then we have LPIT from Poland and Malo and Sintef from Norway. We have 3 universities in the project, which is Politecnico Milano in Italy, and then the University of Vigo and University of Minho in Portugal and Spain. And then we have a lot of companies in the project. That would be Rangel and Porto Vigo and Cemosa in Portugal and Spain. We have Rina and IPO from Italy, and Gebrüder Weiss from Austria and CSL from Poland. And then finally, we also have Alice in the project, but that is all well known to you. Just very briefly, what expertise we have in the consortium. So we have expertise in end-user experience in logistics that is covered by 5 companies and a research organization. Then we have expertise in resilience assessment and tool development. That is 2 research organizations, the 3 universities we have, and 2 companies. And then responsible for the stakeholder involvement, we have a research organization and obviously Alice. So I already presented to you the main objectives of the project, and now I want to break it down a bit to more details. So on one hand, we want to look into resilience analysis, also considering sustainability aspects. So one aim is to a quantitative resilience analysis for multiple interconnected geographical scales. You will see more about these different scales later in our scenarios. And we want to combine the resilience and sustainable logistics domains. We found that one very important aspect for achieving our goals is that knowledge needs to be shared. I mean, we heard already in the previous presentation that this is a key aspect. So the availability of knowledge on disruptions, but also potential disruptions for logistics operators is very important. We aim for a holistic approach for visualization of short and long-term effects. So how to share and visualize the knowledge. And then also real-time information sharing on infrastructure conditions is part of this aspect. And this real-time information also needs to be secured. So this is why cybersecurity also plays a role here. And all of this is important for handling disruptions. So we want to develop decision support regarding competitive and sustainable alternatives in case of disruption. And the synchro modality to increase sustainability and resilience is also considered. So to do this, we want to develop a toolkit for resilience and sustainability consisting of a lot of aspects. I'm just reading them to you now. So we want to predict disruptions via remote sensing, so via satellite data. There will be vulnerability assessment and a traffic model. There will be real-time monitoring and the corresponding cyber protection. Then optimal route selection is going to be one aspect. A digital twin of logistics processes will be developed, very closely aligned with an agent-based logistics simulation, a dynamic event simulation, and finally also the application of synchromodal principles. And all of these software solutions will be combined into one SARIL toolkit. They will not be all interoperable, but we will, over the course of the project, try to find out how they can work together and how they can also work together with existing solutions. I already mentioned that we are working on different scales, and therefore we have defined 3 scenarios, and they exist on a very large scale, but also on very small scale. So we have a regional scenario that is located in the province of Mantua. There, a flooding event is happening, and it endangers the infrastructure, namely a bridge, and a cyber attack simultaneously disables the access to the critical information to react to this threat. This is the very small scale scenario. Then we have an intermediate scale scenario, which is national, or better to call it cross-border scenario, which happens in Portugal and Spain. It faces low probability weather extremes, like, for example, wildfires and snowstorms due to climate change. And then finally, the large scale scenario is an EU-wide or global scenario. It focuses on the EU sea and land freight transport, mainly from Asia to Europe. And it considers global threats like the war and pandemic we've seen already. And it will work on very large scale transportation networks, which is going to be here the challenge. And the SARIL toolkit is then supposed to be employed in all these scenarios to support the decision making, and we need to see which tools are employed where and how they can work together. To define the scenarios in more detail, there have been stakeholder interviews. And first of all, stakeholders have been identified for the 3 scenarios from these categories that you see here. So from policymakers, civil society, research and education, and business community, but also this addition of technology providers. A core group of stakeholders has been identified, which is shown in yellow here. It's authorities, transport infrastructure operators, shippers, and logistics service providers. And then for each of the scenarios, around 20 stakeholders have been interviewed already. And I will just share with you briefly the main findings. So the stakeholders have been asked what strategies and solutions they employ to handle disruptions. And I'm not going to tell you now what they answered, but you can find these answers actually in the survey, because they have helped us to design the questions in the survey. And also the stakeholders have been asked what business aspects are, the most important business aspects are that they monitor. And also these findings can be found in the survey, and they will help us to develop our resilience metric that we aim for in this project. So just to summarize and to show the overall picture, so I talked about the scenarios in the project and the interviews that we've conducted. These interviews are closely aligned to the scenarios. Then from here, we developed the survey, now collaboratively with Remonet. And this survey is very general. And then from the answers and the findings of the survey, we want to have workshops, again, with stakeholders that then map the findings to the scenarios again. Then, as I mentioned, so the scenarios are closely collaborating with the development of the toolkit. And all of this will help us to finally come to our goal that I showed in the beginning, to develop recommendations and business models for logistics operators and authorities. So it's both one, so the stakeholder involvement will inform these recommendations, but also what we learn from the tools that we develop. So from this, you can see, so with your participation in the survey, you can drive the developments in our project, based on your needs. There is also the possibility to join the workshops. So in the survey, but maybe you will see this later again, there are boxes to tick if you want to be part of the workshops. And if you tick those boxes, you might have the chance, if you answer the survey, that you can also be part of the workshops, where we will then sit together in smaller groups discussing the findings and mapping them to the scenarios. So the possibilities to collaborate with us in the project, yes, for sure, participating in the survey. And then you can also, if you're interested, become a member of our advisory board, which we would highly appreciate. So if you're interested, just get in touch and I'm happy to explain you more about that. And for sure, you can get information about the project on the Alice platform and also on the website. And with this, I'm closing my presentation. So thank you very much for your attention. And these are my contact details.
Thank you, Carolina.